And we welcome you into the WMAR Vault. I'm Jamie Costello. Here at WMAR, we're celebrating over 3/4 of a century on the air. We were the first TV station in Maryland, and now we're setting our sights on the future and streaming. And to that end, we're mixing up the old with the new, opening up the WMAR Vault. We're dusting off the nearly 16 million feet of archive footage. That's enough to get us from Baltimore to LA and still have over 400 miles left over. You know, after telling stories of others during Black History Month, it's now time to talk about our history here at the station. We lost a great storyteller in Horace Holmes. I know you watched him on weekends and in the morning in his To the Point public affairs program, and the Vault will honor his life in just a moment. We have also brought in morning anchor Randall, who learned about Channel 2 history by telling the story of June Thorne, the first African-American woman to host her own TV show. And as Randall enthusiastically said, this was before Oprah. But to kick off the segment, how about a man you see every Sunday morning on Grace and Glory? Here is Lee Michaels.
On February 4th, Lee Michaels, a disc jockey for WBGR Gospel Radio in Baltimore, locked himself in this studio for 24 hours to raise money for the homeless of this city.
February 4th was a very special day for us, and yet people are still sitting in pledges for the homeless.
During his 24-hour on-air appeal, more than $50,000 was pledged. 6 weeks later, more than $41,000 had actually been collected.
God bless you. It just goes to show we can make a difference if we try. We want to let you know tonight as we leave, it makes no difference what you're going through. The Lord can make it all right. And I don't care who you are, you can make it tonight if you try.
Recently, in appreciation, members of the organization that will distribute the funds, Action for the Homeless, surprised the DJ at the radio station to present him with gifts displaying their gratefulness, balloons, a cake, and a plaque commemorating his effort. Lee Michaels was touched by the appreciative recognition, but more so by the generous response of the listeners to his appeal and to the plight of the homeless.
Really, Susan, I'll never forget it as long as I live. The accolades are fine, but just the feeling that I had when I came out of the studio that next morning that I did something far beyond what I had comprehended in the beginning, I'll take with me to my grave.
34-year-old Lee Michaels, who has a lovely wife and 2 healthy sons, feels fortunate, blessed, and he wants to do what he can to help others less fortunate to experience some of the joys life has to offer. He is the kind of man who teaches his children a challenging game like chess, as well as how to face life's challenges. He values his family and education and religion and believes in the power of one person if that person is an instrument of God.
I'm nothing by myself. It's only through the power of Christ that I can be what I can be, and I can do what I can do.
Give it all that you've got.
Doing gospel has given me a spiritual high that far exceeds any high that I've had working in secular radio or in any other field. You know, it's something about gospel that just transcends normal boundaries, and you know, it does something. I give out to people, but I receive at the same time.
I've been a blessing from the Lord this morning. This is going to be a special day. No matter what your trial, your circumstance, your burden, you can make it. Turn it over to Jesus. You can make it if you try.
Karen J. Mitchell graduated from Douglas High School and Morgan State University and then joined the Morgan faculty. The civil rights leader was 47 when he became the first black Marylander elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. There he sponsored and backed legislation that addressed basic human needs: freedom, food, shelter, opportunity, jobs. He believes in liberty and justice for all. Dr. Levi Watkins, Jr. integrated Vanderbilt Medical School back in 1966. Today, he's one of their most famous graduates. Not long after joining the Johns Hopkins Medical School staff, the young surgeon became the first to implant an automatic heart defibrillator. His work in open heart surgery and the treatment of cardiac arrest have advanced heart patient care. A champion of civil rights, Dr. Levi Watkins started Hopkins' annual Martin Luther King Jr. lecture series. He is also considered responsible for the significant increase in the number of black medical students at Hopkins. Dr. Watkins is making a difference as he strives to fulfill two dreams, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s and his own.
We're going to invite Horace out, and we're going to have a little contest here this morning. This is his seat, this is his throne, this is where the anchorman sits. And what we're going to do is we're going to but watch how many steps it takes Horace Holmes to leave his seat and to go into the studio. Now you can call us at 435-8477. That's 435-8477. Guess how many steps it takes Horace from his seat to a studio seat. You ever count them before?
I've never counted it before. So
have we ever met before?
Yes, we have. But
all right. I'll tell you what, toll operators.
I didn't do what you said I did.
Okay. All right, Horace Holmes, there you are. We're going to set the tape right here.
Okay.
You count them for us.
All
Ready?
Right,
here it goes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, you coming in here? 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 45 steps is the correct
45
answer.
steps. We had a lady from Laurel, Delaware call collect and say, well, no, we didn't pick up the phone. She called. She called and guessed 42 steps. Laurel, Delaware. 42 steps.
42 steps? That was
I can't remember what her first name is, but
I
she
can't
guessed.
believe if I'm more shocked that we just did that on television or how dirty the newsroom is. I'm not sure which. What a dump.
Tell us how you really feel about that,
No,
Dirty.
it doesn't look that bad in person, but when you see just little snippets of it, it looks really dirty.
Well, my shoes didn't look too great either.
Your shoes are great, by the way.
Some people in this business you never forget. Horace Holmes was one of those. Horace was a top-notch reporter. His way was to connect you with the story he was telling so that you'd feel the emotion. He anchored the weekend news with Brad Ganson, Scott Garceau on sports, and Tony Pagnotti did weather. Horace then moved into the morning where he was as brilliant as the sunrise. He and Rudy Miller were a great team. Ken Phillips did the weather, and Jack Dawson did sports and school lunches. You know, one great story was a housebound viewer wrote to Horace asking if he could go out and get footage of Wayne Newton's concert at the Merriweather Post Pavilion. She was a big fan. Well, Horace went to work. He got a limo, coaxed Miss Audrey out of her house for a day of pampering, and with her new do, we drove her to Atlantic City where Wayne Newton put the spotlight on her and sang her a song. That was Horace Holmes, always treating the viewer like one of his family members. Last summer and into fall, we would text after every Oriole game. His final text was when we played Texas, and he said, quote, "Let's go." His wife then texted me over Thanksgiving that Horace was living out his final days. The first time I cried is when he left us to go to WJLA in Washington. The second time I cried is when he left us for good a few months ago. Some people in this business you never forget. And I will never forget my friend, Horace Holmes.
When he was legal counsel for the NAACP, Thurgood Marshall won 29 of 32 cases he tried before the Supreme Court, including the one that broke the separate but equal doctrine. As a student at Douglas High, he had learned segregation and equality were not compatible. Now, as a member of the Supreme Court, Justice Thurgood Marshall is considered by many to be the true conscience of that body.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WMAR Vault. I'm Randall Newsom. Man, pretty cozy in here. Now I see why Jamie's always hanging out in this place. You know, Jamie is just one of the great personalities that's come through WMAR, and it got me wondering about some of the others who've walked through these doors and blazed a trail, specifically for black talent to make an impact here at the station. Here's a look at a few of the all-time greats to come through Channel 2.
WMAR went on the air in 1947, but didn't move to Television Park until 1964. That move was the beginning of a new era for Channel 2. The social climate was changing in the country and in the broadcasting industry, and WMAR was changing with the times. More women were brought into business, as well as African Americans. One of those early trailblazers was a man named Chuck Richards, a name already familiar in Baltimore. He was born in the city and graduated from Frederick Douglass High School in 1931. Shortly after graduating, he moved to New York and embarked on a very successful singing career, performing at venues like the Cotton Club, and sang and recorded with some of the most successful and popular groups around. A Baltimore Sun article says between 1934 and 1940, he recorded between 20 and 25 records with various groups. When he returned to Baltimore, he bounced all over the local airwaves. He was a DJ on WITH, WBAL, and WCBM. From there, he moved on to television, producing and hosting shows in the Baltimore market. In 1964, Chuck Richards joined WMAR as a staff announcer, reporter, and assistant public affairs director.
Well, it sounds like and looks like everyone here is having a wonderful time. This is the Rock and Stumble Club out at the Rolling Road School, out on Rolling Road. And these youngsters, all handicapped from the age 14 to 21, are being entertained tonight by Tommy and the Artells.
Richards was a big part of the success over the years with the Children's Miracle Network telethons and eventually became president of the Muscular Dystrophy Association of Maryland.
One of the nice things about having 197 stations along these United States is that you can come to a variety of cities and meet varieties of people who function for you along the telethon route on Labor Day. And I'm in reference to a gentleman who on WMAR, Baltimore's best, Channel 2, is a gentleman who hosts our telethon locally, and I'm delighted to be here in Baltimore with him and welcome him for your edification, Mr. Chuck Richards. Chuck, welcome.
Hi there.
I'm welcoming you to your own thing.
Well, I'm welcoming you, too, on behalf of all those kids who have MD. And
Thank you.
I know the folks here are glad to see you.
His work brought him and the station many accolades for public service. An advertisement captioned Richards as a goodwill ambassador who brought WMAR closer to his viewers and its viewers closer to the issues of the day.
The current temperature is 57 degrees and the relative humidity is 62%. The barometer reads 29.96 inches and it's rising. And that portends good weather. And we hope in that good weather you'll do as we always suggest, drive carefully. This is Chuck Richards. Join us at 11:55 for the next edition of News Watch 2.
Just 4 years after the arrival of Chuck Richards to WMAR, the station was looking to expand its Newswatch team with another veteran journalist. George W. Collins, already known as a distinguished reporter from his nearly 20 years at the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper, was brought in and appointed as associate editor of Newswatch. While at the newspaper, Collins won numerous citations for skillful, courageous reporting and perceptive writing, but his move to WMAR meant a wider audience and a new medium of reporting.
Baltimore City scored a new milestone in history today when Milton Burke Allen took the oath of office as state's attorney for Baltimore City.
An Eastern Shore antique dealer and his wife charged today that state highway officials are determined to destroy their thriving business here on Kent Island.
There is a growing suspicion in our society that Americans as a whole are becoming increasingly callous about the plight of old people.
This building will stand as a monument to the mutual cooperation between all segments of the community in an effort to solve those problems and fulfill those promises. George Collins for Newswatch.
George W. Collins had a big footprint in the newsroom during his tenure at WMAR. He brought with him a new perspective to Channel 2 and a new way to bring light to the issues of the day. Not only was he a news anchor and reporter, but he also produced and moderated the show Man to Man, where community leaders would confront and debate controversial issues.
Because if people in the community are not concerned, then you can't operate.
Thank you very much. The dimensions of this problem, of course, are really frightening. So in addition to the problem of alcohol, we have drugs, and it's not getting any better. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
You have been viewing Man to Man with George Collins. Tonight's program was Hard and Soft Drug Tolls Still Growing in Maryland. Views voiced on this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management. The program was recorded.
And along with George Rogers, he moderated a series of town meetings to directly address the concerns within the community.
You're asking how can you define a Saturday night special? Now, if the police department gave out those statistics, I'm sure they could define the Saturday night special. Now,
isn't it not a fact that during the time this bill was being considered, the legal department of the state said that there is no legal definition for such a weapon?
Throughout his career, he covered significant events in civil rights, including the March on Washington in 1963 and the funeral of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Like the audience itself, clergymen participated in the memorial services, represented all faiths and all creeds. Many of them knew Dr. King at the height of his career as the nation's #1 civil rights leader. This is George Collins reporting for Newswatch.
In 2003, the Smithsonian Institute cited George Collins as, quote, one of the best American journalists of the 20th century. 1968. A turbulent year in Baltimore and in the country, but it was also a time of liberation, a time where business-oriented women were working during the day and running the house when they got home in the evening. For years, WMAR produced a show called The Woman's Angle, originally hosted by Ann Marr and then by Sylvia Scott. The show was focused on the homemaker and aired during the day on weekdays. But it was time for WMAR to get out of the kitchen and expand the show to the working woman. Auditions were held to find a host for the program. Again, looking to the community for the right person, WMAR found the perfect host in Miss June Thorne. June graduated from Frederick Douglass High School in 1944, then from Coppin State Teachers College before earning her master's degree in education from NYU. She taught first grade and was an assistant principal. Then in 1960, while looking for a new adventure, she joined the Arena Players, was extremely popular, and quickly became a local A-lister on the stage. Before the world met Oprah Winfrey, they were introduced to June Thorne, the first African-American woman in Baltimore to host her own talk show.
And join up so that you can do the marvelous job that these young people are doing that you saw today. Thanks for being with us. Bye now.
The new show, called The Women's Journal, was designed as a complement to the weekday show, but focused more on home management and culture instead of just cooking recipes and cleaning products. The Women's Journal was extremely popular, running for 10 years in the 1 p.m. time slot on Saturdays.
Hi, I'm downtown outside of the Hilton Hotel, and right behind me, I'm sure you recognize Baltimore's own Morris A. Mechanic Theater.
And good luck with it. Thank you for being with us today. See you next week.
And those are just 3 of the early Trailblazers you've witnessed in front of the WMAR cameras. But we can't stop there. When we come back, we'll take a look at a man who made a name for himself behind the lens. We'll be right back.
When growing up, Alice Pender Hughes' role model was her first grade teacher. After graduating from Douglass, she followed in her role model's footsteps and majored in elementary education. Mrs. Pender Hughes' career with the Baltimore City Schools moved from classroom teacher to the first woman superintendent of the system. Her priority remains the student in the classroom.
Hello, I'm Sloan Brown. In celebrating Black History Month, we present one of today's Black Marylanders making history. Baltimore-born Ethel Ennis is a living legend. Her name stands for remarkable versatility. Ms. Ennis made musical history as the first performer to sing the Star-Spangled Banner a cappella. She was the unaccompanied soloist at President Nixon's inauguration. A pictorial biography of her career will be published later this spring. Ethel Ennis, a distinguished Black Marylander making history.
Welcome back to the WMAR Vault. The station's move from downtown to Television Park back in the early 1960s was like the changing of the guards for WMAR. From the first generation of technicians learning and inventing television on the job to the second generation of professionally trained camera operators and videographers like Reggie Daniels.
The year was 1969, and Reggie was still in school at Morgan State when he began working at WMAR. He immediately began shooting film, working as a news photographer, and performing studio duties. He was everywhere, covering everything. He worked on the news and commercial productions until 1981 when he left to work on a new syndicated show called Jack Anderson Confidential.
For 2 months now, Lebanon has been an incendiary among the powder kegs. I've just returned from the war zone. I was able to take a camera crew to places no one else has gone. I talked to the leaders and the fighting men on both sides.
During that time, he traveled to some of the most dangerous places in the world, including a 1982 assignment that took him deep into the DMZ in Lebanon for an interview with the PLO leader, Yasser Arafat.
I'm not leading ships. I'm leading freedom fighters and men and women who are ready to die for their targets and for the sake of their people.
After his stint with Jack Anderson, he ventured into more creative outlets with his work, producing commercials and music videos for local, regional, and national clients, and racking up an award-winning resume.
Action.
Look good on camera.
You look great, man.
All right.
Wow, and those are just a few of the Trailblazers who truly opened the studio doors for so many others here at WMAR. For nearly a century, WMAR has brought the news into your home, from film to video to tiny digital cards, over the air, cable, satellite, and now streaming. We'll keep moving forward, and remember to look back at the stories and the moments that make us all Maryland. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the WMAR Vault. For Jamie Costello, I'm Randall Newsom. Thanks for watching.
Hey, it's Jamie Costello. If you just enjoyed this episode of The Vault, you can check out more episodes by clicking on this box down here. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that circle, and that'll subscribe you to WMAR-2 News for great content every single day.